Good morning, Pioneer family. I'm sorry that I couldn't be with you this morning. Started feeling a little sick this week, and it's Friday right now, and so just in the event that I'm not able to go on Sunday, wanted to pre-record the message today. So if you're seeing this video, a bug some kind has got me down at the moment, but I appreciate your prayers and look forward to being with you again next week. We'll jump into our sermon for the morning. Happy Super Bowl Sunday to those who celebrate. And I feel like it's always a bittersweet day in our world, you know, because as Cowboys fans, like we always feel like we should be there. This was our year, you know, just like last year and next year. But I'm glad we're not. Like, who wants their team to go to the Super Bowl? You know, like it's too stressful. Like, just enjoy the regular season. Just enjoy having a ton of positive momentum, and then suffer a gut-wrenching loss that makes you question all joy and hope in life at the beginning of the playoffs. Then you can enjoy a few weeks of football on the other side of that. I don't even want to go to the Super Bowl. This is better. Anyway, go Chiefs, I guess. Welcome to week 5 of Bless the World, our New Year's series. We're considering the mission all Christians have been called to, and the mission to share the good news of Jesus with our neighbors, to make disciples. We'll be in Mark chapter 7 today. Mark chapter 7. Feel free to turn there now if you'd like to follow along. And we're back in this series after a 1-week break, so let's do a quick recap of everything that we've covered thus far. We're working through a model based in the acronym BLESS. And today we've come to the first S in that word. So looking at that acronym, we see that B stands for begin with prayer. And if we're going to effectively live out the mission to which God has called us, it's going to start with our relationship and our connection to the God of the mission through prayer. L stands for listen. When we truly listen to people and show interest in their lives and in their history and in their heart and their habits and their hurts, we ask the questions that take the relationship deeper. E stands for eat, and we know how to do that. As we saw 2 weeks ago, eating as a practice in the kingdom of Jesus is about inviting others to the table, breaking bread together in community. And then that brings us to today, where S stands for serve. Mark chapter 7, verse 31 says, "Then Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre and Sidon down to the Sea of Galilee and into the region of the Decapolis." We'll stop there for just a second because I want to set the scene in its context. Jesus had been in the region of Tyre and Sidon, and so you can see they're north of Galilee, and he's traveling down southeast to the Decapolis. Both of these regions are pagan territory, which is important for a variety of reasons, but not least of all because it means that most of the people in these regions would be opposed to the message of Jesus about the God of Israel. And the people of the Decapolis were the first time he went there. You may remember we covered this story last summer in our Lake Life series. Jesus travels into the Decapolis, and he's met by the most demon-oppressed person that he would ever encounter in his entire ministry. And this story is found in Mark chapter 5, just a couple of chapters before where we are today. And there's this fascinating series of events where Jesus eventually casts a host of demons out of the man, and they go into a herd of pigs, and the pigs, they run into the lake, and they all drown. And seeing the massive hit that their economy had just taken, the people began to plead with Jesus. Mark 5:17, plead with Jesus to leave their region. They begged him to leave. And the man out of whom he had cast the demons begged to go with him. But Jesus didn't let him. He said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you." And so the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. This is the conclusion of that story. And we don't read anything else about the Decapolis until 2 chapters later, where we are today, Mark chapter 7. Jesus has left the vicinity of Tyre and Sidon. He has traveled for only the second time in his ministry that we know of, into the region of the Decapolis. This is verse 32. There some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could hardly talk, and they begged Jesus to place his hand on him. Did you catch it? Last time he was there, they begged him to leave. The NIV translates it plead, but it's the same word. They had begged him to leave. And after they heard the testimony of the man he had freed from demon possession, and they saw the transformation in that man's life and the impact that Jesus had had on his life, when Jesus then comes back, they don't beg him to leave. They beg him to bless. The act of laying on of hands was a physical act of blessing in that ancient culture. The people don't seem to have any expectation that Jesus could heal the man, but they're asking him to lay his hand on him to bless him. But here's the point that I really want us to understand. In our mission to share the gospel with our neighbors, if you're intentional about doing that, there will be people who don't want to hear anything about it. There will be people who have an unfavorable predisposition against Christianity or against all religion. There will be people who are even hostile to the message of Jesus. More than a few Christians over the centuries have endured harsh or antagonistic responses from people they only tried to love and share the good news with. More than a few Christians have had friendships fall apart because the other person did not want to hear about the gospel. If you follow this model, if you pray for your neighbor and you truly listen to them and you ask them about their life and their heart and their story, and you invest your time into them, and you invite them into your home and around your table, and you build a relationship with them, and when you eventually try to share your faith with them and they brush you off or ghost you or even respond harshly to you, I want you to remember that the people of the Decapolis begged Jesus to leave. But he planted a seed in their community, and he sent another to water that seed. And after some time went by and he came back, they didn't beg him to leave. They begged him to bless. And here's my point, and I want all of you to hear me on this. You are not responsible for how your neighbor responds to the gospel. I'm going to say that one more time. You are not responsible for how your neighbor responds to the gospel. Now, you are responsible for how you present the gospel through your words and your actions and your relationships and your lifestyle, but you are not responsible for how your neighbor responds to the gospel. I want you to know this because when you invest your time and your energy and whatever you have to offer into another person, and you pray for them and with them and you witness to them and you hope in your heart that they will come to know and love Jesus, and they end up ghosting you or brushing you off, it hurts. It hurts. There's no other way around it. And if you're serious about sharing your faith, that's going to happen to you at some point. But it may be that God sent you to plant a seed. It may be that he's going to send someone else to water that seed. And it may be that the next time you see them, weeks, months, or even years down the road, they may have a completely different perspective on faith and on God and on you. This is all to say it's up to us to be faithful with what Christ has called us to do. He has not called us to determine the final result. We do not carry that weight. We are called to be witnesses, and Jesus is Lord over the outcome. Now, there are three important application points we can learn from Jesus in this story, Mark chapter 7, about serving others. So first, Jesus comes back to the Decapolis a second time, and even after the people had begged him to leave, he returns again. He knew that God had a mission for him. He knew that God had a mission for him in the Decapolis, and he wasn't going to abandon those people. And so here's the first point that we learn from this story. Serving is about proximity. This sounds elementary, but Jesus served the people that God put in front of him, the people that God called him to. In the same way, we are called to serve those who are near us. This may seem elementary or rudimentary, but in a generation that's all about building a platform and gaining thousands of followers and doing numbers on the socials and curating your brand in the kingdom of Jesus, serving is still about caring for the person in front of you. Now, who are the people near you that God is calling you to serve? Dave Ferguson writes, when it comes to serving, God has either sent you to the people you are to serve, or he is going to send you to the people you are to serve. Almost without exception, the people you're meant to serve will be in close proximity, right around you. Who is that in your path? Take a moment and let God bring someone to mind. Who's your someone? Jesus knew who God had called him to serve next, and even though they had rejected him once, he left the region of Tyre and Sidon and went to the Decapolis again, because you can't serve someone that you're not willing to draw near to. Serving is about proximity. And the second thing Jesus teaches us here is that serving is personal. Serving is personal, and we remember the context, right? The last time Jesus saw these people, they were begging him to leave. They wanted nothing to do with him, and now their perspective has shifted. They bring this man to him that's gone deaf and has a severe speech impediment, and they're asking Jesus to bless him. And I don't know about you, but if I were Jesus, this would be the ultimate vindication moment for me, like, oh, so now y'all want me to bless you. Last time I was here, y'all were super rude because of that whole pig thing. I mean, I get it. Nobody wants less bacon, but y'all didn't want me around here. You begged me to leave. And now you want me to bless your uncle or your neighbor or your friend or whatever. Or if I were Jesus, this would be my opportunity to show out in front of all these people who didn't appreciate me the first time. I'd get the whole town together, I'd make sure that everyone was watching. That's not how Jesus does it at all. Verse 33, after he took him aside, away from the crowd, Jesus put his fingers into the man's ears, and then he spit and touched the man's tongue. Okay. He takes the man away from the crowd because Jesus knows that truly serving someone is not about being seen. It's personal. And he had healed people publicly before, so it's not like he was averse to doing this kind of thing out in the open, but this situation is special. This man is deaf, and he has a severe speech impediment. And for as long as he has suffered with this affliction, he has been different. And his life in community has become a source of constant frustration. We can only imagine the looks and the laughter that he endured through the years. And Jesus takes him aside, away from the crowd, because he sees this man for who he is. He sees his heart and his life and his suffering, and he refuses to let this moment become another spectacle for the crowds. Jesus loves this man well by taking him aside. And he teaches us in the process that serving others is not about being seen. It's about seeing people for who they are. It's personal. And what do we make of these strange actions he takes? I mean, he puts his fingers in the man's ears. He spits, presumably on his hand, and then he touches the man's tongue. And all this seems kind of weird and kind of gross and unhygienic, and we can't make sense of it. And some scholars say that because Jesus can't ask the man any questions, or he can't verbally explain to him what he's going to do, that this is how he is communicating with the man. Others make reference to the ancient belief that saliva carried medicinal properties. Now, I don't personally find either of these explanations to be especially compelling, but neither can I say that I have a better answer. It's strange, and certainly these things weren't necessary for the healing. Jesus healed many people without touching them. He healed some without even speaking to them or being in the room with them. But we remember this man's condition, and we can infer that though there were obviously people who loved him, most people probably made fun of him or looked at him as being unclean or treated him with contempt. And by touching this man's ears and by touching his tongue, Jesus is telling him that he's seen, that he's valued, that he's loved. The man likely just expected, a hand on his head and maybe a hand on his shoulder, a word of prayer or blessing. But when Jesus puts his fingers in his ears, when he touched his tongue, he touched the points of shame. He touched the points of weakness. He touched the points of brokenness in the man's life. Serving is personal. And it was through that very personal act of empathy and identification that healing began. And then Jesus looked up to heaven, and with a deep sigh, he said to him, Ephphatha, which means be opened. At this, the man's ears were opened, his tongue was loosened, and he began to speak plainly. So in the climactic moment of the miracle, we learn that serving is not only about proximity, serving is not only personal, but serving is powerful. And I mean that literally. When Jesus served others, he accessed the power of God. Notice he looked up to heaven. He didn't operate out of his own strength. He asked for guidance and wisdom and power from his Father. And we can be so quick to say, well, yeah, he's Jesus. Jesus can heal. He can perform miracles. He can do stuff like that. I can't do that. Jesus told his disciples, very truly, I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing. And they will do even greater things than these because I'm going to the Father. The voice of doubt says, I'm not Jesus. I can't do what Jesus did. The voice of faith, the voice that takes Jesus himself at his word, says, I can't do anything, but God can do whatever he wants through me. And so I'm going to serve. I'm going to sacrifice. I'm going to pray and believe and be faithful over that which God has placed in front of me. And I'm going to trust him with the outcome. The very same Spirit that empowered Jesus was gifted to the church when Jesus ascended to the Father. And if you are a follower of Jesus, that very same Spirit and that same power lives in you. And when we serve others, the Spirit empowers us to do whatever God has called us to do in that moment and in that situation and for that person. And notice, Jesus looked up to heaven for that power, and he did it with a deep sigh. There are a handful of moments in the Gospels, almost always seems to be in the presence of profound brokenness and death, when Jesus demonstrates deep, deep emotion. Sometimes it's sorrow, like at Lazarus' tomb. Sometimes it's anger, like when he overturned the tables in the temple. And sometimes it's compassion, like when the tired and hungry crowds followed him into the wilderness. There are special moments in the gospel narratives where we are given a glimpse into the heart, into the mind, and the emotions of the Savior. And right here, he knows he's going to heal this man. But before he does it, he lets out a deep sigh. He's troubled by the presence of brokenness and the distortion of God's design that has taken hold on this man. He feels the pain and the suffering of the person in front of him. He feels it deep inside himself, and his emotions come out in a slow, heavy sigh. Take note of how strongly Jesus cares for each one of us. This is the epitome of a servant's heart. I've heard some of you say before, when I pray for people, I get emotional and I feel their pain and their hurt and I cry and I don't know why I get like that, and I ask God to help me not get that way. No, don't ask God to take that away from you. Thank Him for giving that to you. That is a gift. Those of you that feel the pain of others so deeply in your heart that you sigh and you groan and you weep over the suffering of your neighbors, you are blessed with the empathy and the compassion of Jesus. And when you carry those emotions to the throne of God and intercede on behalf of your brother or sister, pleading through tears and pain, you are serving them better than you could possibly know. True service comes from the soul, and in it there is great power. The Apostle Paul writes to the Corinthian church, "Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." We can serve others well because we have been served well. In our mission to bless the world, we know how to be gracious because God has been so gracious toward us. We know how to forgive others because we have been so forgiven. We know how to be generous with others because God has been so generous with us. We know how to love others because we have been so loved. We are blessed to be a blessing. We are comforted to be comforters. And we have been served so faithfully, so personally, and so powerfully by the goodness and the hope and the love of the Lord Jesus that we must now go into the world as agents of the same goodness and hope and love toward our neighbors, to serve others in our proximity, both personally and powerfully. I want to tell you about something new and exciting that we're implementing here at Pioneer. It's an initiative called Bless Every Home. Bless Every Home is an app that allows us to know our neighbors by name so that we can pray for them, so that we can get to know them, so that we can serve them and hopefully build relationship with them. This is something that we are doing with people in our community through One Kingdom, a network of big country churches and pastors and leaders. Bless Every Home can be an amazing tool to help us live out the mission that we're called to. And here's a short video with more information.
And now we have this incredible tool, blesseveryhome.com. Sign up free at blesseveryhome.com and you'll receive a map and list of your neighbors along with the tools to pray for them by name, care for, and share the gospel with them. You can even highlight your pray, care, share journey with each neighbor home using the colored icons. Each neighbor home has its own journal. You can also choose to receive scheduled reminder emails with the next 5 neighbor homes to pray for that day.
What are we waiting on? The harvest is now.
Our prayer is that by the end of 2020, every single home in America is being prayed for by name.
Join Bless Every Home and see how prayer can change your community.
Church family, we are asking you to download the Bless Every Home app, and we're going to have the QR code on the screen for you here in just a moment. And I want to ask you to download that app want to ask you to register as a light with Pioneer Drive Baptist Church so you can register your account in the Bless Every Home app with Pioneer Drive so that we can track how many in the Pioneer family, how many of us are engaging with this and how many of us are praying for our neighbors and seeking to bless those around us. So that's our goal with this. However many people we can get to sign up to engage with this so that this can become a part of our daily rhythm and our daily life, that we are praying for our neighbors by name, that when we have the opportunity, we can get to know our neighbors, we can build relationship with them. It's what we've been talking about through this whole series. We want to pray for people. We want to listen to them. We want to invite them to gather around the table. And we want to serve them. And sneak peek for next week, we want to share our story with them because we're sent. We're sent to do that. So today, your call to action is to download the app, register as a light with Pioneer Drive, and if you would commit to praying for even one of your neighbors per day. Now, the app is going to encourage you to pray for 5 every day, and that's great. You pray for 5 every day, you're doing amazing. But if you would just commit to even praying for one of your neighbors each day, even just one, if we could get 250 Pioneer Drive members, that's a small minority of our congregation. If we could get even 250 Pioneer members to commit to pray for one neighbor each day over the next 40 days, then as a church family, we could pray for 10,000 homes, 10,000 neighbors and families in our community. And of course, it goes up from there. 500 members commit to do it. We can pray for 20,000 homes, 20,000 neighbors. So I would encourage you, download the app, register, and maybe set a goal for yourself. How many of my neighbors can I pray for over the next month, over the next year? How many of my neighbors can I get to know? How many of my neighbors can I serve and can I share the gospel with? I want to thank you for joining us for worship today. God bless you.